Hey guys, tonight we're setting down our phones, sliding into our comfiest blanket burrito, and drifting far from the chaos of the modern world. You're not just sipping tea tonight, you're squatting under a eucalyptus tree, in the misty highlands of Ethiopia, watching someone grind tiny green seeds by hand. The air smells like damp earth, crushed herbs, and a whiff of wood smoke. No fancy cups, no foam art, just ritual, rhythm, and, oh yeah, an origin story featuring very energetic goats. Welcome to the ancient roots of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony, a sleepy, slow, motion cultural cornerstone, so steeped in tradition that it hasn't rushed in 1,000 years. But heads up, you probably won't survive this tale. Between the altitude, the scalding cups, and the pressure to politely sip 3 full rounds of coffee, even your dreams might need a nap. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments so we can all feel like a global sleepover. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along a narrow mountain path, the soles of your feet picking up dust, twigs, and a vague sense that your GPS has abandoned you. Around you the hills roll like frozen waves, lush and green, with gnarled coffee trees clinging to their slopes. These trees, Coffea arabica, aren't lined up in orderly rows like on Instagram plantation tours. Nope, they're wild, tangled, and a bit sassy looking, like they don't really care if you notice them. This is Kaffa. Yes, the actual region that may have lent its name to the drink that would one day keep half the planet functioning past 2 p.m. But back in the day, coffee wasn't a beverage. It wasn't a ritual. It wasn't even roasted. It was a berry, eaten raw by herders. Sometimes mashed into fat balls for energy, other times used to flavor soup. Culinary scholars still debate whether this early use qualifies as the first coffee, or if we should wait until it's brewed to count. Enter Kaldi, or maybe don't, depending on how literal you like your history. The tale goes that Kaldi, a young goatherd, noticed his flock acting, well caffeinated, jumping, bleeding, even attempting synchronized stunts after munching the red berries of a certain plant. Curious, Kaldi tried the berries himself and joined the goats in what was probably history's first unofficial rave. Now, this story is almost certainly apocryphal. Historians still argue whether Kaldi ever existed, or if he's just a catchy myth retrofitted to explain coffee's divine discovery. But the image sticks, a wide-eyed shepherd, buzzing in a foggy glen, unknowingly launching a global obsession. You crouch near a cluster of those same wild coffee shrubs, tugging a red cherry from the branch. It's sticky, slightly sweet, and surprisingly juicy. Not at all what you expected from the seed of your dark, bitter morning brew. Inside, you find 2 pale beans you chew cautiously, a bit grassy, a touch nutty, 0 espresso magic. But your brain perks up, not from the caffeine, just from the ancient connection humming through your fingertips. Around you, birds call lazily through the trees. There's a rhythm to it all. The wind, the distant bleating of goats, the occasional twig snapping underfoot. You're not just in a place, you're in a pace. One where things aren't rushed, where meaning takes time to steep. Down in the valleys, monasteries begin to rise, humble stone structures where monks spend their days praying, reading scripture, and trying not to fall asleep mid-chant. It's here that coffee begins its transformation. Monks start experimenting, drying the beans, roasting them slightly over fire, perhaps even boiling them in water like a kind of herbal decoction. The goal: stay alert for midnight prayers. Was this the first true brew? Again, the scholars go back and forth. Some say yes. Others argue the original brews were more like medicinal soups than pleasure drinks. One fringe theory even suggests that early monks mixed coffee with wine, creating a holy cocktail of sorts. No one agrees, which, frankly, feels very on brand for history. You settle by a small fire outside a monastery. A monk hands you a crude wooden cup filled with something dark and steaming. It smells vaguely familiar, earthy, slightly sour with a ghost of roast. You sip. It's gritty, but also warm, comforting, and strangely grounding. Like the forest, the prayer, and the drink are all tangled together. The monk smiles gently, gesturing toward the flames. We drink, he seems to say, so we may wake, not just in body, in soul. That might sound lofty for a cup of joe, but here, under the trees, it feels true. You lie back on a bed of grass, letting the sense of smoke and soil lull you towards sleep. The coffee hums quietly in your bloodstream, not like a jolt, but like a whisper. Stay a while, it says. There's more to see. Your eyes flutter open as the sky glows with that early haze of blue just before sunrise. Somewhere nearby, a rooster considers its options. The monastery behind you is already murmuring with soft chants and the clink of morning prep, but your focus isn't on prayer, at least not the chanting kind. You're here for a different ritual. One whispered down through centuries, still warming hands and waking minds across Ethiopia. Chaldee's legend still hangs thick in the mountain air, but now you see its legacy seeping into stone walls and disciplined routines. Coffee has found its first real home among monks, books, and sleepy chants. It's here, in this sacred stillness, that the world's favorite stimulant starts becoming something more. You walk the perimeter of the monastery garden, your fingers brushing rosemary bushes and rows of drying herbs. A small figure approaches, barefoot, robes dusty, and carrying a shallow basket filled with red coffee cherries. He nods, silent but sure. This, you realize, is a daily rhythm. Pick, dry, roast, repeat. Inside the cool, dark kitchen, you witness the first real brews emerge from the shadows. The monks use long-necked clay pots, nestled right into the embers. Water, beans, maybe a few herbs. Nothing fancy, but something deeply focused. You sip from a shared wooden ladle, still warm from the flame. It's bitter, yes, but it doesn't slap you awake. It coaxes you, like an old friend tugging gently on your sleeve. Historians still argue whether these monks were the first to ritualize coffee preparation, or whether similar brews popped up independently among Oromo herders and forest dwellers. What's clear is this, in this quiet place, coffee isn't a trend, it's a tool. A kind of sacred spark that helps bridge the body and the divine. One monk, tall, with eyes like sleepy comets, hands you a strip of parchment with a single word inked on it: tea. Bana. He taps his chest, then his cup. This isn't just a drink, it's identity. A quirky side note: these early brews may have doubled as medicine. Some herbalists in the region mixed coffee with roots, barks, and even animal fats. The result? A brew that allegedly cured everything from headaches to heartbreaks. One 16th century traveler even claimed it cured his fear of singing in public. That part, still unverified. As the sun climbs, the kitchen fills with more monks, each greeting the cup before the man. You're handed a second round, then a third. It's the origin of a future tradition: Abal, Tona, and Baraka, the three sacred rounds of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony. Only here, it's not yet a ceremony, just a practice. One that's forming quietly, like steam swirling upward, waiting for its moment. Outside, the goats from Chaldee's tale make another appearance, clambering up rocks like caffeinated circus performers. One locks eyes with you. You nod respectfully. Legends deserve reverence, even the hoofed ones. As dusk falls, the monks prepare for night prayers. But before they chant, they gather in a circle, the coffee pot at the center like a silent leader. No one speaks as it's poured. You hear only the glug, glug, glug of liquid meeting wood. In that moment, you understand the ritual isn't just about caffeine. It's about community. It's about stillness wrapped in warmth. And yet, not all was peaceful. Some early records suggest disputes. Yes? Actual monk drama about how strong the brew should be, or whether coffee encouraged too much wakefulness. One rule reportedly limited novices to 1 cup per day. A rebellion of mild proportions may have followed. Details fuzzy. caffeine levels high. You sneak away from the firelight, stepping carefully between stones and sleeping dogs. The stars above look exactly like they did in Chaldee's time, unbothered, blinking slowly. Somewhere in the valley, another fire crackles, another pot simmers. The ritual spreads silently. In time, it will move beyond these walls, into homes, villages, and generations. But for now, it's enough to sit here, cup warm in hand, watching steam rise into the dark, whispering its way into history. You wake to the sharp, earthy tang of burning wood. Not the cozy, marshmallow, roasting kind. This is raw, local, and immediate. You're crouched beside a low fire, somewhere on the edge of a tiny Ethiopian village, and someone is tossing dried twigs into a soot, blackened hearth. Smoke curls upward in lazy spirals, and you, my sleepy traveler, are about to witness one of the earliest known incarnations of what we might call a coffee ceremony, though it's less ceremony right now and more methodical breakfast alchemy. There's no kitchen, just flat stones, a few worn baskets, and a woman grinding coffee beans in a heavy mortar with the kind of rhythm that would absolutely go viral if TikTok had been invented in the 11th century. She barely looks up, even as you shuffle closer, eyes watery from the smoke. This is her zone. This is her ritual. She roasts the beans first, right there over the fire in a shallow metal pan. The smell, it's punchy. Bitter, slightly fruity, and definitely enough to make you sit up straighter. The beans crackle and darken, popping like popcorn on low volume. Then, she cools them in a woven tray, fanning with a swift flick of the wrist. You try to help, but the tray twirls out of your hands like a frisbee. She chuckles quietly and doesn't ask again. Historians still argue whether this form of village roasting came before or after the monastic brews you tasted earlier. But here, in the folds of daily life, coffee isn't about spirituality. It's about survival, warmth, togetherness, and maybe a bit of village gossip. She adds the roasted beans to the mortar and begins to grind, steady, unhurried, almost hypnotic. The rhythmic thump, thump of stone against stone wraps around your thoughts like a lullaby with a caffeine kick. Her jebana, a long, necked clay coffee pot, sits on the coals nearby, water already heating. The ground beans will go in next, brewed directly in the pot. No filters, no timers, no barista lingo. You wonder if this is the origin point of modern pour over hipsterdom, minus the mustaches. There's no clock, but you know it's time because other villagers begin to appear. A hunched elder, a boy with a goat slung over one shoulder, a girl with braids who brings her own tiny cup. No one speaks much. They sit, they wait, they belong. You do too, now. Sort of. The first round is poured straight from the jebana. No milk, no sugar, no nonsense. You take a sip, it's sharp, smoky, there's grit at the bottom, but it doesn't matter. You feel present, like every step of this morning, from the firewood to the grinding to the exact angle of the pour, was meant to carry you to this moment. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some early traditions, villagers didn't just drink coffee. They rubbed the wet grounds onto their skin. Some believed it could heal cuts, soothe inflammation, or even act as a mosquito repellent. Results may vary. You consider trying it, but decide against smelling like a compostable exfoliant. There's no formal blessing, but there's a mood, a shared hush. The second round of coffee is thinner, milder, but no less sacred. This is Tona, meant to prolong the gathering. The kids sip from chipped cups. The elders nod between slurps. The girl with the braids offers you a flatbread with honey. You take it, grateful, because nothing makes sense on an empty stomach, not even historic beverages. You spot something curious near the fire, an old, carved spoon resting beside a leather pouch. Inside, ground cardamom and a twist of dried ginger. Not always used, but sometimes added to the pot for special occasions. You wonder what qualifies as special: a wedding, a good harvest, a Tuesday that doesn't totally suck. A few men drift in from the fields, led by a donkey with a definite opinion on where it's allowed to stand. The ceremony flexes, makes room. No one is turned away. The third round is served baraka, or blessing. You're not entirely sure what it's blessing, but as the fire dies down and laughter rises, you feel something lift inside your chest. Peace? Possibly. Or maybe just the delayed onset of caffeine. Scholars still debate whether this open fire version predates the fully ritualized bana ceremony that will rise later. Was this rustic, daily sharing the root from which the formal tradition bloomed? Or is it a simpler branch, coexisting in quiet corners, while the main event evolved elsewhere? There's no consensus, just stories and steam. You help clean the cups, rinsed with hot water, no soap. The jebana is scrubbed with ash, an old trick that somehow works. As the villagers drift away, the woman gives you a parting glance. Not a smile exactly, more like a soft nod that says, "You drank, you stayed, you're okay." The embers fade, your breath slows, and somewhere in the haze of roasted bean smoke and rising day, the ritual begins again, for someone else in another village by another fire. The sun is higher now, and so are you. Climbing the hill out of that quiet village, feet dusty, mind still half steeped in roasted smoke. The path curves gently upward, tracing the line between forest and farmland, where wild coffee shrubs begin to give way to tidy rows, cultivated intentionally. This isn't just subsistence anymore. You're walking into a world where coffee is becoming community. In the distance, you hear it before you see it, laughter, clinking cups, and the soft clop of hooves as donkeys ferry sacks of green beans from grove to market. This is the village hub, and today is a kind of informal celebration. A birth, a name day, a neighbor finally building that long-promised storage hut. Honestly, no one's sure. But when coffee is involved, does it really matter? You settle under a woven canopy strung between two poles. The heat shimmers in the distance, but under this roof, there's shadow, cool air, and the scent of incense. Not your sleepover style lavender incense. This is frankincense, gritty and golden, tossed onto a bed of coals in a tiny metal burner. The smoke spirals up, threading through the rafters, mixing with the first waft of roasted beans from nearby. This is no longer the makeshift fireside affair of before. You're now witnessing the bones of the full Ethiopian coffee ceremony assembling piece by piece, still informal, still flexible, but growing in pattern. The host, a woman in her 50s with hennied fingertips and the calm confidence of someone who's poured thousands of cups, moves with practiced ease. Her jebana gleams, its base blackened from years of use. A tray holds tiny ceramic cups, cine, all arranged in perfect rows. Children scamper around, gathering twigs and fanning the coals. It's communal, yes, but it's also a performance. One with expectations, traditions, and quiet pride. Historians still argue when the modern structure of the coffee ceremony crystallized. Some claim it emerged fully in the 16th century. Others believe it was a slower evolution over hundreds of years, layering in elements from different ethnic groups and spiritual customs. But all agree, something important was happening here. Coffee wasn't just a drink, it was a language. As the beans roast, the host gently stirs them in the shallow pan, making sure they darken evenly. When she's done, she doesn't rush to grind. First, she walks around the circle of seated guests, letting each person inhale the fresh aroma. It's an offering, a moment, a pause. You lean in, warm, nutty, slightly sweet. Your stomach does a little excited shuffle. Here's a fringe tidbit for your sleepy brain in some regions. Guests don't just smell the roasted beans. They're invited to wave the smoke toward themselves, almost like a mini purification. A caffeine-infused blessing, if you will. Grinding begins, this time in a tall wooden mortar with a long pestle. The sound is deeper, almost like a heartbeat echoing through the floor. Thump, thump, thump. No rush. No shortcuts. Just rhythm. You're starting to realize this isn't about the coffee at all. It's about the making, the waiting, the being together. As the grounds go into the jebana, water is added with a careful hand. The pot nestles into the coals like it was born there. No boil and dump method here. The coffee brews slowly, heat creeping up through the clay, coaxing the flavors gently. You're offered a snack, maybe popcorn, maybe roasted barley. Every region's different, but the vibe is the same. Stay snack, sip. The first round of all is poured. The host lifts the jebena high, the stream of coffee arsing gracefully into each tiny cup without a drop wasted. It's a test of skill, really. You hold your breath, waiting for the inevitable splatter. None comes. She's a pro. You take your first sip. Dark, strong, a bit gritty, but balanced, deep, comforting. Like an old friend wrapped in a campfire, around you murmurs rise, casual talk, a few jokes. One woman nudges another and nods your way. You smile awkwardly. You're the guest, yes, but also part of the show. By the time the second round, Tona, arrives, the conversation has shifted. People lean in. The air feels thicker with connection. You're not just drinking coffee anymore. You're absorbing stories, traditions, grievances, maybe even matchmaking hints. And just as you're thinking it couldn't get any cozier, someone pulls out a stringed instrument. A krar softly strummed, notes falling like leaves into the laughter. It's the kind of moment a tourist would snap 100 pictures of, but for you. Sitting cross-legged, sipping slowly, it's just peace. The third round, baraka, is thinner, yes, weaker, yes, but meaningful. It's the send-off, the thank you for being here, in liquid form. And though you're technically a stranger, the way they look at you now feels different. You're part of this memory, this rhythm. Scholars might never pinpoint the exact decade this structure settled into place. But sitting here, you realize that history doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it seeps in through steam, through song, through the gentle clink of tiny cups passed hand to hand. The ceremony ends not with a grand finale, but a soft sigh. The incense fades. The coals cool. The children sneak the last of the popcorn. You stand, legs stiff but heart full, and follow the path out of the village. Behind you, laughter lingers like the final curl of smoke from the jebena spout. Your sandals crunch softly on a narrow dirt path, winding between clusters of thatched homes and open fields, stretching into the gold of late afternoon. The coffee you drank earlier hums quietly in your system. Not the jittery buzz of a triple shot espresso, but a low, steady warmth that nudges your senses just enough to keep your eyelids politely lifted. You're not walking aimlessly. You're walking toward something older than maps, woven into the fabric of life here, the subtle belief that coffee isn't just a beverage, it's a bridge. In the next village, the air is filled not just with the scent of roasting beans, but with murmurs, hush voices, melodic laughter, and the occasional hiss of fire meeting wet clay. The ceremony here is in full swing again, but something's different. This time, the focus isn't celebration, it's memory. Someone has died. You're welcomed gently, invited to sit, not asked to speak. It's understood that you listen first. The mood is soft, respectful, but not heavy. Children still chase each other around the perimeter. Elders nod quietly. The host, a woman in a dark shawl, stirs her roasting beans with deliberate grace. Around her neck, a small pouch sways, said to contain herbs and old blessings, tied there by her grandmother. This is coffee as communion, not the wafer and wine kind, but something quieter, slower, brewed in the clay belly of a jebena, and offered not as refreshment, but as remembrance. The first round is a ball, as always, but it carries more than caffeine. It carries stories. The woman pours with bowed head, and each guest accepts their cup like a whisper. You hold yours with two hands, suddenly aware of how small your presence feels here, and how welcome. In some regions, coffee ceremonies are laced with spiritual invocations. Hosts might sprinkle the ground with fresh grass to invite the ancestors, or burn herbs said to attract good spirits. There's no single rulebook, just layers of belief stirred into the steam. Historians still argue whether these elements predate Christianity in Ethiopia, or if they evolved alongside it, adapting old rituals into new contexts. Either way, The ceremony becomes a stage on which belief tiptoes in quietly, cup by cup. Here's a delightful detail for your snoozy curiosity. Some communities believed coffee grounds could be read like tea leaves. After the third round, someone might swirl the remaining dregs, peer into the murky patterns, and murmur predictions. You'll travel far? They might say. Or beware a jealous goat. You don't ask for a reading, but you peek into your cup anyway. It looks like a sad butterfly. Or maybe a map of confusion. Fitting, really. The second round, Tona, comes with a change in tone. The woman leading the ceremony begins to speak softly about the one who passed. Others chime in, not with tears but with laughter. Stories about stubborn habits, favorite dishes, a legendary misfire involving a jealous neighbor, and a missing sandal. It's not mourning. It's remembering. You sip. The coffee is lighter now, both in taste and meaning. The bitterness recedes. So does the tension in your shoulders. Children crawl into laps. Someone begins to hum, low and tuneless, but oddly comforting. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to sink deeper into the tempo of this place. It's not fast. It's not loud. It's slow, warm, and just shy of sacred. By the time Baraka arrives, the fire is mostly embers. The cups are fewer, passed around with a little less ceremony, a little more ease. People lean on each other now. Some begin to leave, pressing palms in parting gestures. The ceremony doesn't end. It tapers off, like smoke drifting toward the ceiling. You remain seated for a moment, watching the host pack away her tools. She rinses the jabina carefully, placing it upside down on a stone to dry. Her movements are unhurried, intentional, the way someone might fold a flag or smooth out a wedding dress. This isn't cleanup. It's closure. You rise quietly, thank her with a slight bow, and step back into the evening light. As you walk through the village, you realize something in Ethiopia. The coffee ceremony isn't just a social ritual. It's a container. It holds grief, yes, but also joy, gossip, dreams, and the soft undercurrent of shared memory. It's flexible enough to be sacred, casual enough to feel like family. A few homes down, you catch the scent of roasting beans again. This time, the mood is light, laughter spilling from open doorways, the slap of card games on wooden tables. Another ceremony, another story, coffee again, but never the same twice. That's the secret, isn't it? Coffee here isn't a product. It's a platform, a way to connect, to reflect, to reset. As the sun slips behind the hills, you find a quiet spot on a stone wall, the last echoes of that third round still lingering on your tongue. The grass beneath you whispers in the breeze. Someone nearby plays a flute, or maybe it's just the wind. Either way, you're full, not from food but from presence, from coffee made slowly, shared purposefully, and sipped like a sacred secret. Your feet carry you toward the glow of another village fire, drawn by instinct now. You know the pattern, the scent of roasting beans, the chatter of guests arriving, the metallic bite of incense, curling upward in lazy loops. But something shifts this time. You feel it before you see it. This is not just another gathering. This dear traveler is the ceremony. Capital C. The fully formed, deliberate, practiced Bana ceremony in all its sensory glory. You're motioned to sit, not by a stranger this time, but by someone who recognizes your dust, covered shoes, your slightly jittery posture from too many cups before. They know you've been journeying. And tonight, you're being granted a front row seat. The space is laid with fresh, cut grass, scattered neatly across a woven mat. That's your first clue. This isn't just hospitality. It's symbolism. The grass represents renewal, peace, and according to one theory still debated among anthropologists, a callback to pre-Christian fertility rites. Or maybe it's just pretty. No one agrees, and no one really needs to. Your host tonight is younger, maybe in her 20s. But she moves like someone much older, her hands deft and assured. She wears a white Habesha chemist dress with bright embroidery at the hem. Around her wrists, bangles that clink softly each time she lifts the roasting pan. She begins the roast, tilting the beans across the flame in a shallow pan, stirring slowly, never letting them burn. You watch the color shift, green to tan to rich, oily brown. The aroma rises, thick and nutty, with undertones of wood smoke and something almost chocolatey. Guests lean in. No one speaks too loudly. The beans crackle like tiny firecrackers, and everyone grins a little. After roasting, she walks the pan around the circle, letting each person inhale. You've done this before, but it still feels intimate, like being offered a scent instead of a handshake. Then comes the grind. This time, a tall wooden mortar and pestle are used, and you notice the rhythm. It's musical. A low thump-thump, then a pause, then again. Like a heartbeat, one guest hums along, another taps their knee. The ceremony is starting to feel like a quiet concert with caffeine as the headliner. The jebana is filled and placed on glowing coals, but it's not just fire that warms it. It's care. There's no rushing here. You could read a novella in the time it takes this coffee to brew, and it still wouldn't be considered slow. As you wait, incense is added to the charcoal burner. The scent this time is more layered. Part frankincense, part something minty. It drifts around the circle, and someone fans it gently so it reaches every guest. You close your eyes for a moment. The smoke brushes your cheek like a feather dipped in memory. Historians still argue whether the three-round structure, Abul Tona Baraka, was codified by religious practice or arose organically through village tradition. Some claim it mirrors the Holy Trinity. Others say it was simply a natural way to stretch out a communal event. Whatever its origin, it's sacred now. The host lifts the jabina with both hands, testing the heat with a slight tilt. Then, slowly she pours. The arc of liquid is flawless, no splashes, no breaks. She fills the first cup, then the next, clockwise, in a rhythm that feels ritualistic. When yours comes, you receive it with a small bow, as taught. It's not just about the coffee. It's about the receiving. The abal round is rich, dark, full-bodied. It tastes like roasted nuts, bitter greens, and something floral on the back end. You sip slowly. Around you, the talk begins, low, warm, and wending. People share stories, ask questions, tease gently. Someone asks where you're from, and before you answer, they guess 3 countries wrong. You laugh. They laugh. Coffee has done its work. During Tona, the second round, the mood shifts slightly. A girl brings snacks, popcorn and barley. You nibble, grateful. The coffee is thinner now, but somehow deeper, less punchy, more mellow. The perfect backdrop for the stories that have taken center stage: a dispute about a neighbor's fence, a memory of a long, lost goat, a joke about a rooster that thinks it's a cow. A quirky tidbit emerges from the chatter in some regions. The second round was once believed to be a test of honesty. If someone lied during Tona, the coffee would taste sour to others. Science disagrees, but you glance at your cup anyway just to be sure. As baraka is poured, the final round, the light outside dims. The fire flickers more than burns. Guests shift closer. The youngest child is asleep in someone's lap. The host smiles softly as she pours. This round is her favorite. She tells you, it's the blessing, the good luck, the parting gift. You sip. It's gentler, almost watery, but somehow perfect. Like the ceremony knows when to let go. The coals are doused. The cups are rinsed. No one rushes to leave, but eventually they rise, one by one, offering thanks with quiet nods. You linger, reluctant to break the spell, and as you finally stand, you realize the Bana ceremony isn't just a tradition. It's architecture. A carefully built house made of scent, sound, sip, and story. One that welcomes all, even sleepy wanderers like you. By now, your hands know the motions even before your thoughts catch up. The roasting pan fits into your palms like it was shaped there. The beans shift easily under your wooden spoon, each darkening moment adding scent to the air, like pages added to a diary. You are no longer just watching the coffee ceremony. You're performing it. Well, attempting to. This morning, you've been invited to help, not just to sip and smile, but to actually prepare the sacred stuff. And your teacher, A woman with impossibly smooth skin, arms like braided rope, and an eyebrow that can express deep skepticism without uttering a single word. She hands you a pan and a shallow bowl of green coffee beans. You hesitate. She gestures roast, so you do. You stir too fast at first. The beans roll wildly, leaping from the pan like caffeinated marbles. One lands near the incense burner and threatens to become an offering. The eyebrow lifts. You slow down. Let the heat guide the process, she mimes. Like browning butter, not burning it. As the beans crackle and darken, the aroma fills the space. Nutty, toasty, just a little bitter. The group of guests murmurs approval. Your confidence swells, right until you're handed the mortar and pestle. Grinding, you quickly learn, is not a dainty affair. The mortar is taller than your forearm, the pestle worn smooth by decades of use. You pound awkwardly at first, either too soft, beans bounce like popcorn, or too hard, bits fly into your lap. The woman steps in, gives the pestle a single, strong hump. The sound echoes with satisfaction. Like that, and so you find a rhythm, hump, hump, scrape, hump. It's oddly meditative. You start hearing the pulse of the village. In it, footsteps outside, the thud of a donkey's tail against a wall, someone calling to a child in the distance. You're part of it now, making the thing that makes the moment. Historians still debate whether the roasting and grinding steps became formalized for practicality or for performance. Did it evolve to showcase hospitality, or did it simply stick because it felt good, like a morning stretch for the soul? No one's quite sure. But the mortar's hum under your hand says it doesn't really matter. You examine the ground's course, slightly uneven. Your teacher takes a pinch between her fingers, rubs it, sniffs. Then she nods once and hands you the jabina. Oh no. You pour the grounds into the pot, already filled with hot water and nestled among glowing coals. It bubbles gently, darkening slowly like ink spreading across parchment. The host, who now seems slightly amused by your very visible tension, adds a pinch of cardamom. Just enough to whisper, not shout. You attempt to lift the jabina, trying to mimic the graceful pour you've seen so many times. It's heavier than expected. The first cup gets a clean pour. The second, splash. The eyebrow again. A child giggles. You bow your head like a chastised apprentice in a kung fu movie. The guests sip anyway. They smile. Someone toasts you with a popcorn kernel. Here's your quirky historical snack. Some communities believed that if a guest poured perfectly, they'd be blessed with good fortune or even fertility. No pressure though. As you sit back, relieved to no longer be holding anything hot, you catch your breath and take in the scene. The ceremony continues. The host resumes control, preparing the next round with practiced ease. You're not needed now, but you've earned your seat at the mat. The second round is warmer, more relaxed. You find yourself chatting without noticing the transition. Talking about food, about how each family has a secret coffee touch. One elder says her mother used to bury beans for a week before roasting them. Fermentation, she claimed. A bold flavor or a funky one, depending on who's telling the story. By the third round, baraka, someone has started singing softly. A lullaby, probably, but in a language that floats like mist. You don't understand the words, but the melody feels like a blanket. You sip, lean back, and let your mind drift. The ceremony ends as all good things do, gently. Cups are stacked, ashes scattered, jebena rinsed and rested upside down like it's napping. You thank your host. She presses a small pouch into your palm. Roasted beans wrapped in cloth. A token, she says, for the road. You realize you've been fully initiated now, not just as a guest, as a student. As you step back into the sun, your shoulders loosen. Your mind is warm, and somewhere behind you, the next set of beans hits the pan with a crack, and someone else's story begins. You're back on the mat, but this time, it's not roasting beans or pounding with a pestle that's got your nerves twitching. It's the jabina, cradled carefully in your hands, and the suspicious silence of 6 aunties. watching you with the intense focus of Olympic gymnastics judges. You've been asked to pour, not the easy, grab a mug and dump it in kind. No, this is the long neck jebana stream, poured from a height into cups no bigger than thimbles, with not a drop to be spilled and not a splash to disgrace. The mat, it's the final boss level of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony. Your host today is named Almaz, and she has the calm authority of a woman who once brewed coffee during a rainstorm using one hand and a sandal. She smiles encouragingly, but also expectantly. You tilt the pot. The stream begins. Everyone leans in. Your hands wobble. Just slightly. Just enough that one auntie sucks her teeth. Another crosses her arms. But somehow, the liquid arcs cleanly into the first cup. Then the second. You're not breathing. By the fourth, your pinky's gone rogue. But you keep it together. 7 cups. No spills. A miracle. There's a pause. Then Almaz nods ever so slightly. The aunties murmur in approval, and one even claps once. You exhale so hard it sounds like a bicycle tire deflating. But it's not over yet, because pouring is only part of the dance. Grace, timing, and presentation are everything. And yes, those aunties are still watching. Historians still argue whether the elevated pour technique originated for practical reasons. Cooling the liquid slightly, perhaps. Or for flair, turning the coffee moment into a performance. It likely started as both function wrapped in beauty. Like so many good things. Almaz resumes the ceremony, her own pours flawless, her timing precise. As she serves a bowl, conversation begins to flicker and build. You realize something interesting. Who pours and who speaks isn't random. There's a structure here, almost like an unspoken script. In some households, only the host, or more specifically, the senior woman, prepares and pours. Guests wait quietly during the first round out of respect. During Tona, talk loosens, but it's the elders who guide it. And during Baraka, everyone's welcome to speak. But the youngest pour last, a soft initiation into the circle. You lean into the rhythm, watching how Almaz glances at her guests, anticipating when to refill, when to pause, when to let silence stretch. There's mastery here. Not just in the hands, but in the intuition. Here's a quirky cultural twist in certain regions. A host might add a dash of salt or even butter to the brew. It's rare, but not unheard of. Meant to symbolize wealth, warmth, or maybe just a quirky local preference. You try a sip of one such cup and find it surprisingly good, like coffee with a wink. As the second round begins, you notice something else. The cups are passed from hand to hand, never set directly on the mat. It's subtle, but it feels important, like the coffee shouldn't touch the earth, or maybe like it should always be in motion, part of a living chain. You sip. The flavors have mellowed. The chatter grows. One auntie begins telling a story about her first coffee mishap, how she mistook fenugreek for cardamom, and ended up serving what she still calls spite brew. Everyone laughs. The tension of the earlier pour melts away, replaced by warmth and shared memory. The third round, Baraka, is poured with less ceremony, more ease. Cups passed without fuss. The fire is down to coals. Almaz starts collecting the used cups, rinsing each with practiced flicks. You offer to help. She hands you a cloth and a smile. It feels like graduation. There's something deeply satisfying about this moment. Not just the coffee or the compliments, but the way the ritual draws you in, makes you necessary, not just welcome. The aunties rise, stretch, and fuss about the time. One leaves a handful of roasted grains as a parting gift. Another pinches your cheek and says something about not bad for a tourist. You beam. Historians love to analyze these tiny cultural mechanics. Who pours, who speaks, when silence is sacred. But when you're inside the rhythm, none of it feels academic. It just feels right. Like water flowing through a carved groove, shaped by countless hands before yours. The ceremony ends. The jebana is rinsed, turned upside down. The mat is shaken out. You help fold it. The aunties head off in different directions, their day resuming like nothing profound just happened. But you linger, standing in the patchy sunlight, the aftertaste of buttered coffee still lingering on your tongue. You think that was a good pour. You find yourself perched on a low stool in the corner of a sunlit courtyard, watching a ceremony unfold in a way that feels familiar. And yet, something's different. It's not the beans, not the jabina, not even the tray of freshly popped corn. It's the people. More specifically, who's doing what and who definitely is not. There's a rhythm here, but also a hierarchy. And while the scent of roasting coffee curls through the air just like it did in the hills, the dynamics are more layered now. This ceremony is about more than coffee. It's about class, gender, and the roles everyone plays, often without a word. The woman preparing the coffee today moves with the same practiced elegance you've seen before, but her shoulders hold a stiffness, like she knows she's being watched and judged all at once. Her name is Hannah, and she's dressed in her best Habesha chemis, hair braided tight, gold hoops swinging as she tilts the pan over the fire. But she doesn't speak much. That's not her role. Around her, seated on straw-wrapped stools, are the elder men of the neighborhood. They nod, hum, occasionally comment on the aroma or the consistency of the grind. Not about Hannah herself, of course, just the coffee, because in this setup, she is the vessel. The ceremony flows through her hands, but not her voice. You glance around. In the back, younger girls help prepare the snacks, arrange cups, tend to the fire. They're watching closely, learning by observation. No one says, "This is how it's done." It simply is, passed down like muscle memory, like how to blink or braid, or keep your tone respectful in the presence of someone 3 social tiers above you. Historians still argue whether the traditional role of women in coffee ceremonies was empowering, a domain entirely their own, or restrictive, a beautiful prison dressed in perfumed smoke. Some say it's both, a performance of skill, grace, and endurance. With the microphone, you watch as Hannah pours the first round. Her hand is steady, her expression serene, but her eyes flick upward every now and then, just briefly, checking the men's reactions. Not for praise, just for absence of complaint. That's the standard. Here's a quirky historical slice for your snoozy brain. In some highland villages, a woman's suitability for marriage was once judged, in part, by how well she conducted a coffee ceremony. A botched pour, an uneven roast, or, heaven forbid, a cold cup could doom a courtship. No pressure, right? As a ball is served, the conversation begins. But it flows around Hannah, not through her. Politics, crops, local disputes. She refills cups, adjusts the fire, and pretends not to hear. But you can tell, she hears everything. Tona comes next, and the mood softens. One man tells a story about losing a cow to a mischievous hyena. Another counters with a tale about chasing off bandits using nothing but a metal teapot and raw fury. There's laughter now, and Hannah's shoulders drop a little. The men include her in a joke. Just a glance, a nod, and she smiles. It's fleeting, but genuine. You sip. The second round is smoother, less intense, like the walls have lowered just a notch. And as the third round brews, a quiet conversation starts between 2 of the women in the back. Low, quick, mostly side-eye. It's gossip, clearly. Not scandalous, just spicy. And definitely more interesting than the hyena tale. Coffee is being shared on 2 levels, what's said publicly and what's murmured in the margins. During Baraka, the host finally speaks. She thanks the guests, compliments their stories, and asks one about his sister's recovery. Her voice is gentle, but assured. This is her closing note, her signature on the ritual, and everyone listens. You start to see the complexity here. Yes, roles are defined. Yes, traditions lean hard on gender and hierarchy. But within those lines, people carve space, finding moments of agency, control, even resistance. In urban centers, you've heard, things shift. Men sometimes prepare coffee, women sometimes lead. But here, the older patterns still hold sway, and they carry both weight and beauty. As the ceremony ends, the men leave slowly, offering thanks and nods. One lingers a moment to compliment Hana's brew, sincerely, perhaps. Or out of habit, she receives it with the grace of someone who's heard it 100 times and still knows how to smile like it's the first. You help her gather the cups. She thanks you in a whisper, and you sense a flicker of camaraderie, shared awareness. You weren't just a witness. You were part of the balance today. As the sun slides lower and the coals turn to dust, you step back onto the path, thinking of all the rituals that flow unnoticed beneath the surface of tradition. The coffee may be the same, but who holds the jebana? And what that means changes everything. You wake to the sound of distant drumming. Not celebratory drumming. The slow, deliberate rhythm of something ancient, solemn, and rooted. Your eyes blink open in a shadowy room. Walls of thick mud, brick softened by candlelight. Outside, the air smells like ash and incense. A day of ceremony lies ahead, not for coffee alone, but for memory, protection, and survival. You're in the highlands again, but this time, the village feels tighter, not just physically, but emotionally. Everyone moves with quiet urgency. Whispers carry between homes. Fires are kept low. It's wartime, or perhaps the aftermath of one, and the coffee ceremony has taken on an edge, a kind of reverent defiance. The host today is Meseret, a woman with hands that look like bark and a gaze like flint. She doesn't smile much. Not because she's unfriendly, because there isn't time. She's setting up the ceremony like a general preparing camp mat out, jebina on embers, incense ready but restrained. No singing today. No wide laughter. Just the ritual. It's a fast, a holy day, and that changes the rules. No snacks, no milk. The coffee will be black, unflavored, stripped to its bones, the way, some say, it was first meant to be. Historians still argue how coffee ceremonies shifted during times of war and religious observance. Some claim they were scaled back or even abandoned. Others believe the ceremony persisted as a form of resistance, a tether to normalcy when everything else was burning. Here, with the coals glowing low, you believe the second version. Meseret roasts the beans with precision, the scent muted but still rich. She doesn't pass the pan around this time. No time for luxuries. But she grinds them slowly, methodically. You watch each motion, each press of pestle into mortar, and realize this is how you hold a community together. Not with speeches. With steady hands, she brews the coffee in silence. There's no hum of conversation, just the crackle of the fire and the occasional murmur of prayer. When the jebana finally hisses, a kind of collective breath is released, as if everyone's been holding it. The first round is poured, and you receive your cup with reverence. The taste, it hits differently. Not just because it's bitter, but because it's brave. This is coffee made not to impress, but to endure. You sip, your throat warms, and somehow your heart steadies. There's a story passed quietly among the guests, a tale of a woman who brewed coffee for soldiers hiding in the hills, using crushed charcoal to mask the scent from enemy scouts. The beans were ground fine enough to be dissolved in water, no jebana needed. Portable power, a sacred act in a time of shadows. Here's a fringe theory for your tucked-in brain. Some folklorists believe coffee served during mourning or fasting was not just tradition, but magic. The bitterness carried grief away. The heat burned off fear. The act of sharing it bound survivors together in invisible ways. Whether you believe that or not, the cup in your hands feels heavier than usual. By Tona, the second round, a few voices begin to rise. Softly, carefully. Someone asks about a missing cousin. Another wonders if the rains will come on time this year. It's not small talk, it's cautious hope. Meseret still doesn't smile, but she nods. The third round. Baraka arrives with something unexpected. A song. Low, rhythmic, more like a chant. One of the elders starts it, tapping a stick against the floor. Others join, voices weaving into a kind of lullaby meant to hold the space. Not cheerful, not mournful, just present. You sip. The coffee is light now, nearly translucent. But the flavor clings to your tongue. You feel it in your spine, in the base of your neck. a warming shield against the unknown. As the ceremony ends, no one rushes to leave. They sit with it, with each other, with what's missing and what remains. Meseret finally speaks. Just once. Again tomorrow, she says. And that's it. You walk away through narrow alleys and crumbling walls. Children dart past, barefoot and laughing. Despite it all, you see the Jebna being washed, slowly, carefully, even though there's no clean water to waste. The ceremony adapts, in war, in grief, in fasting, but it never breaks, because the ritual doesn't depend on joy. It depends on presence, on gathering, on showing up, cup in hand, when everything else has fallen away. And as night creeps in, and a cold wind rises, you whisper a thank you into the cup you carry. Not for the flavor, for the fire it kept lit, even in the dark. You've drifted down from the highlands, through forests and fields, and now the dirt beneath your feet turns to cobblestone. The air feels different, thinner, sharper, humming with the uneasy pulse of arrival. You're in a town, not a sprawling city, not yet, but large enough to host travelers, traders, and the curious glint of colonial boots. The coffee ceremony here still lives, still smokes and simmers and steeps, but now it's being watched, documented, interpreted through the monocle of empire. You step into a shaded courtyard where a woman named Yeshi is preparing her brew. She wears a silk wrap over her shoulder, her posture poised like a queen without a throne. But beside her stands a European man, pen in one hand, notebook in the other, and a smile too wide to be sincere. He asks questions not to understand, but to categorize. Is this daily? Is it religious? Is it primitive? The words fall like pebbles, small and irritating. Yeshi nods politely, but her eyes roll in fluent Amharic. Historians still argue whether colonial-era accounts of Ethiopian coffee ceremonies were more helpful or harmful. Some early writers described them as quaint, exotic, a charming folk custom. Others called them superstitious nonsense. Either way, the lens was never neutral. As Yeshi roasts her beans, the man sketches her hands. He notes the incense burner, the order of the rounds. He even counts the guests, 6 today, and records it as if it's a fixed rule. You stifle a sigh. He's missing the point entirely. But here's the irony. While these outsiders tried to document the ceremony into rigid form, the tradition itself remained fluid, alive, changing slightly from village to village, even from one host to the next. Today's quirky tidbit: one colonial anthropologist wrote that the ceremony was obviously borrowed from Arab coffee customs, entirely ignoring Ethiopia's status as the likely origin of coffee itself. Yeshi, when told this years later, reportedly laughed so hard she dropped a jabana. You sit quietly, observing the contrast. The guests, mostly Ethiopian, mostly older, know the rhythm. They sip slowly, leaning into conversation. The foreigner, meanwhile, never drinks his cup. He keeps sniffing it, scribbling more notes. He doesn't notice the coffee going cold. Yeshi's daughter, around 10 years old, mimics her mother's movements, playfully roasting a handful of imaginary beans in a shallow pan made of bark. You watch as tradition passes sideways, not downward. Not formalized. Just absorbed. By Tona, the foreigner has wandered off to photograph a donkey. The ceremony reclaims itself. The laughter returns. A neighbor arrives with roasted chickpeas. Someone begins humming a folk song about coffee and love and chickens that refuse to lay eggs. Yeshi pours with renewed grace, no longer performing for anyone but the people she's chosen to serve. The third round, Baraka, is lighter than air and sweeter than usual. She's added a whisper of cinnamon, a regional twist. Nothing that would show up in a dusty academic footnote. You lean back, eyes half closed, listening as the talk drifts to family reunions and bad harvests. The pen and paper outsider may have left, but others will come, always watching, labeling, interpreting. But the ceremony will outlast them, because it doesn't need to prove itself. After all, coffee in Ethiopia isn't folklore, it's life. The ceremony doesn't exist to be recorded. It exists to be shared. And yet, the global gaze does leave a mark. Tourists will soon arrive. Cafes will mimic the ceremony for show. Some will honor it, others not so much. But in this courtyard, Yeshi's brew stays grounded, even as the world leans in. You rise quietly, cup in hand, and offer to rinse the jabina. Yeshi waves you off with a smile. Tomorrow, she says, like a promise. And you realize history may try to capture this moment, may twist or shrink or mislabel it. But the real ceremony, smoky, sassy, alive, will always belong to the hands that brew it, not the eyes that watch. You're walking now through streets lined with electric wires, the scent of diesel replacing wood smoke, and the shouts of vendors echoing between corrugated rooftops. You've reached the city, Addis Ababa, or maybe Bahir Dar, depending on the route you took in your dream state shuffle. Either way, the tempo's changed. But somewhere in this concrete swirl, tucked between satellite dishes and corner stalls, there's a smell that stops you in your tracks. Roasting beans. You follow it like a cartoon bloodhound, nose first through alleys, up stairwells, until you find it a second-floor apartment, windows open, and inside, the unmistakable shape of a jebana nestled among glowing coals on a portable stove. The coffee ceremony alive and well. Even here, you knock softly. A man named Emmanuel opens the door. He's in his 30s, wearing a soccer jersey and house slippers. You want coffee? He asks, as if that's ever really a question. Inside, it's a modest living room. Plastic chairs, lace curtains, a flat screen playing music videos. But in the center, a mat, incense, a pan of green beans waiting for flame. The structure holds. Emmanuel explains that his mother taught him. That in the city, people still do the ceremony, just maybe not every day there's traffic, jobs, school runs. But on Sundays, or holidays, or whenever the heart asks for it, they set the mat down and return. Historians still argue whether urban life diluted the ceremony or merely transformed it. Some say convenience killed the ritual. Others see it as adaptive, folding tradition into modern spaces, like a recipe rebalanced for a smaller kitchen. You sip and decide it's both. And neither. Here's your offbeat fun fact. In some apartment blocks, neighbors take turns hosting. Floor 2 does Sunday. Floor 3 handles Tuesday. One woman once ran a coffee ceremony in the laundry room because the smell helped her forget her homesickness. Worked like a charm. Emmanuel's girlfriend arrives, dropping her purse and kissing him on the cheek before kneeling to help roast. They don't argue about roles. They share them. She grains. He pours. It's a duet, not a solo. The guests include a cab driver, a college student, and a tailor who brings sambusas wrapped in foil. You sip a bowl, realizing that though the view outside shows rooftops and antennas, the feeling inside is still village warm. Tona arrives, smoother, more chatty. The conversation shifts to rent prices, a missing cat, someone's cousin who almost got on The Voice. You laugh, surprised how easily the modern world tucks into the corners of this old ceremony. Then the power goes out. No one panics. Candles are lit. The TV dies. But the coffee, it keeps brewing. That's the quiet power of it all. The city can hum and buzz and glitch, but the ceremony, even here, doesn't break. It bends, adapts, survives. During Baraka, a neighbor stops by with her toddler. The child is handed a toy, then a cup. Watered down, of course. It's her first taste, her first circle. You watch as she mimics the motion: sip, nod, sigh. The crowd cheers softly, a future barista in the making. Emmanuel leans back and tells you how, during the protests last year, people in his building made a point to brew daily. Not because they had time, but because they needed togetherness. When fear walked the streets, coffee brought the doors open. You help collect the cups. The jebana is cleaned in the kitchen sink, then dried on a rack beside two mismatched mugs and a Hello Kitty plate. Life blends. You leave just as the lights flicker back on. The TV resumes its beat, but the ceremony remains in your mind, just as deep, just as sacred, even among plastic furniture and LED glow. And as you walk the city's edge, past juice stands and honking horns, you realize that the ceremony's not gone. It's everywhere. in kitchens, on balconies, in quiet moments stolen from loud lives. The city didn't erase it, it just added a new verse to the old song. You're on a plane now, at least metaphorically, packed in with the faint whir of white noise and the soft crinkle of someone's snack bag 2 rows over. But this flight isn't headed to vacation or a business meeting. It's flying you into memory, into longing, into the unmistakable homesickness that brews stronger than any cup of coffee. You land somewhere outside Washington, D.C., or maybe Minneapolis, Toronto, Melbourne. The details shift, but the essence stays the same, a neighborhood stitched together by storefront churches, halal markets, and flags draped in apartment windows. The Ethiopian diaspora has found a rhythm here, and guess what scent wraps around you the moment you step into the right address? Yep, roasted coffee beans. Tonight's ceremony is happening in a modest living room, the carpet worn soft and the walls proudly lined with family portraits. Your host, Selam, left Ethiopia a decade ago. She now works 2 jobs and speaks in that gentle staccato of someone balancing languages in her head like plates. But today, she's hosting Bana, and nothing else matters. The incense burner is an ornate brass piece, brought from back home in a suitcase, stuffed with gifts and longing. The jebana, authentic, slightly chipped, a relic of another kitchen. The cups, mismatched, some with fading flower prints. Still sacred. You settle in, socks only, as the room fills with the familiar scent of roasting. Guests arrive slowly. An uncle with an infectious laugh, a niece wearing AirPods, a neighbor who brings sambusas in a plastic grocery bag. It's not a village courtyard, but the spirit's there. You feel it. Historians still debate whether diaspora ceremonies preserve tradition more rigidly or let it evolve faster. Some argue that distance makes people cling to roots. Others say new soil means new blossoms. Selam doesn't argue. She just roasts and smiles. During a ball, the talk centers around flights. Who's coming? Who's visiting? Who forgot their luggage again? It's warm, nostalgic, a kind of verbal jet lag shared by all. You sip your cup and imagine it's flavored with memory. Maybe it is. A quirky detail emerges. Salam once brewed bana at her son's middle school for Cultural Day. The other kids thought the incense was magic fog. One brave student called it better than Starbucks. Salem was asked to come back the next year. She declined. The ceremony wasn't meant for the school gym. You notice how certain elements have flexed. The fire is now an electric stove. The grass is synthetic, bought online. The popcorn comes from a microwave. And yet, it feels just as real. Maybe more so, because each shortcut is made in love, in effort, in remembrance. By Tona, the conversation deepens. Someone brings up politics, both American and Ethiopian. Voices rise, not in anger, but in passion. It's not a debate, it's a tether. Everyone trying to stitch 2 homes into one heart. Children sneak cookies. A cousin snaps selfies. The music shifts from old Amharic ballads to The Weeknd. No one minds. The coffee is still strong. During Baraka, Salam thanks everyone for coming. She speaks in Amharic first, then repeats in English, not because she must, but because she wants her niece to understand. The girl rolls her eyes, but smiles anyway. And there, in that smile, you see the ceremony's future. You offer to help clean. Salam refuses at first, then relents. In the kitchen, she tells you quietly that her mother still hosts Bana back home. They talk every Sunday. Sometimes, they each brew at the same time and pretend the oceans don't exist. You leave with a plastic bag of leftover popcorn and a heart swollen in a good way. The cold air hits your face as you step outside, but you barely notice. Inside you, the coals are still warm. The diaspora didn't forget the ceremony. It carried it, protected it, shared it, yes, but also shielded it from dilution. Not always perfectly, but lovingly. And wherever it lands, in living rooms, in church basements, even in laundromats, it builds a little home. One that smells like roasted memory and sounds like 3 languages folded into laughter. You're walking now through the gates of a hotel in Addis, one of those sleek, glass-clad buildings that looks like it should house diplomats or secret agents. The kind of place where someone hands you a damp towel on arrival and the coffee is usually machine made, except not today. Because just past the lobby, beyond the polished tiles and the elevator chiming its ding of luxury, you see it, a stage, a mat, a jebena gleaming under spotlight, and a signed traditional Ethiopian coffee ceremony every hour on the hour. You tilt your head. Harley, a hostess in perfectly creased white robes, greets you with a smile so precise it feels rehearsed. The air smells right, roasted beans and frankincense, but something's missing. Not wrong, just airbrushed. This is the tourist version. You sit, trying not to be the snob who says, "Actually, I've seen the real thing." But the ceremony moves like clockwork. Roast, grind, pour. Every action timed to a soundtrack of ambient flute music piped through the ceiling. The hostess begins to speak, narrating the ceremony in English with carefully measured tones. The first round is called a ball. It is strong and shared among honored guests. You're one of them, apparently. You resist the urge to wink at the jabina. Historians still wrestle with the ethics of cultural performance. Is it exploitation? Preservation? Both? There's no consensus. But here, sipping from your branded ceramic cup with "Welcome to Ethiopia," stamped on the side, you feel the tension. Still, you watch. The host's movements are beautiful, controlled. Her pour is flawless. The incense curls exactly as it should. It's clearly been practiced 100 times, and there's pride in that. Quiet, maybe, but genuine. She's not just performing, she's presenting. And somewhere behind the rehearsed lines you sense a heartbeat. Here's your oddball fact in some high-end resorts. The coffee ceremony is offered with a wine pairing. Cabernet with Tona. You politely decline the fusion. Some things don't need blending. The audience around you is a mix. Tourists with wide eyes, a few locals clearly here for the ambience, and one guy who's just trying to charge his phone. But as the coffee is poured and the scent fills the room, even the skeptics lean in. You take a sip. It's good. Not incredible, but good. Smooth, balanced, maybe even a touch too clean. You wonder if they filtered it to avoid complaints about grounds. Then you catch the host smiling, just briefly, as a toddler in the front row mimics her pouring motion with invisible coffee. She notices, and instead of sticking to the script, she nods and hands the child a real, empty cup. The room softens. Phones lower. Cameras pause. Just for a second, the ceremony breathes. During Tona, the host adds a small twist, a piece of sugarcane candy passed around. She mentions it was her grandmother's tradition, though it's not part of the official hotel script. You smile. The ritual sneaks in, no matter the stage. You sip your second cup, watching the performance shift gently toward authenticity. The guests ask questions now. One woman says it reminds her of her grandmother's tea ceremony in Iran. Another says it smells like her aunt's house in New Jersey, which somehow makes sense. Coffee connects, even when polished, even when packaged. During Baraka, the host lowers her voice. "This is the blessing," she says. "For togetherness, for thanks. No translation needed. You drink. The cup is warm in your hand, and you realize, yes, this is curated. Yes, it's tourist-facing, but it's still reaching. Still whispering something real beneath the show." After the ceremony, you speak to the host briefly. Her name is Lulit. She's been doing this 4 times a day for 6 years. You ask if she ever gets tired. She shrugs. "Sometimes. But I remember why." She gestures toward the mat. "It's not about perfect. It's about presence." You thank her. She smiles. The lights dim. The next group arrives. The cycle begins again. As you step back into the city's buzz, horns honking, taxis racing, smoke curling from street vendors, you carry something soft with you. Not the coffee. The care. Because even in a demo behind glass walls and scripted lines, the ceremony finds a way. It adapts, it waits, and then it speaks. The road curls outward now, away from cities, away from curated showcases, and back into the quiet places where time seems to lean more heavily against the horizon. You find yourself walking alongside an old riverbed, dried for the season, its stones warm underfoot. There's no ceremony here today, no gathering, no jebena perched on a glowing coal, but the scent lingers. You swear you catch it, on the breeze, in the dust, in the whisper of eucalyptus overhead. The aroma of roasted beans, the ghost of frankincense, the faint warmth of a fire just barely remembered. It clings not to the air itself, but to your memory. And in that moment, you understand something. The ceremony was never just a thing people did. It's something they carried. You sit on a low stone wall beside a field where nothing moves. And in the stillness, you begin to trace the journey backward. Not yours, exactly, but the coffee's. From this very earth, these highlands, these tangled shrubs that first birthed the beans, all the way to global mugs and sleepy 7 a.m. boardrooms. Historians still debate whether coffee's worldwide spread was destiny, accident, or colonial hijack. Did it ride out on merchant ships by chance, or was it always meant to bloom beyond its native soil? They'll keep arguing. That's what they do. But the ceremony, the act, the rhythm, the gathering, stayed close to home even as the beans scattered. Your quirky final tidbit? In one Ethiopian folktale, coffee beans were originally stars that fell to earth when the gods sneezed. The people found them, and not knowing what they were, threw them in the fire. The smell made them weep with joy, and thus coffee was born, not brewed, but blessed. The sun dips behind the hills, and the first stars appear. Tiny, glinting echoes of that myth. You exhale deeply, not from exhaustion, but release. You imagine the ceremony still happening all around you. Though you can't see them, you feel them. In a remote village, someone lights a fire with old eucalyptus bark. In a city apartment, someone stirs a pan of beans with a plastic spoon, humming an old lullaby. In a suburban kitchen thousands of miles away, a child smells frankincense for the first time and asks, "Is it always like this?" And someone answers, "Yes, always." The coffee ceremony didn't fade, it rooted. It scattered with the diaspora, yes, but it also bloomed again and again in quiet corners, living rooms, festivals, funerals, love stories, everyday Tuesdays. It adjusted its voice but never lost its language. You walk slowly back toward a distant village light, thinking of all the hands that ever held a jebena. Old, young, sure trembling. Each one part of a lineage not traced in family trees, but in motions roast, grind, brew, pour, share. You remember the aunties judging your pour. The smoky courtyard laughter. The child sipping from an empty cup like it held secrets. All of it part of the same story. Your story now too? And as you reach the edge of the village, where incense curls upward into the night like a whispered spell, someone calls to you. You want coffee? You smile. Of course you do. The fire burns lower now, the edges softening into embers. Your breath slows, matching the gentle hiss of cooling coals. The mat beneath you shifts slightly as someone gathers the last of the cups, their steps light and unhurried. The smoke thins, rising in soft ribbons toward a sky brushed with quiet stars. You feel the weight of everything and nothing all at once. The stories, the scents, the warm linger of each cup. It hums in your chest like the final note of a lullaby. There is no rush. The ceremony is done, but it hasn't ended. Not really. It lives in the pauses, in the quiet moments after goodbye. It settles into your memory like mist, soft and shapeless, yet comforting. You carry it with you now, not in your hands, but in the space between heartbeats. You let your eyes close. Let the scent of roasted memory drift. Let yourself fall into the rhythm of stillness. The ceremony has spoken. You are welcome to rest.